My name is Skylar, and I'm 29 years old. Most days I felt like I'd been 29 for about a decade already, maybe more. My life was a loop, a never-ending cycle of caregiving that started the moment my feet hit the floor each morning. The first alarm always went off at 6:01 a.m., not for me, but for Ira. My brother Ira is 24, 5 years younger than me, and paraplegic since birth. He's sharp, as smarter than most people give him credit for, but his body doesn't cooperate. So my day began with the familiar routine, transferring him from bed to his wheelchair, helping him with his morning hygiene, making sure he ate something before his physical therapy aide arrived. It was a dance I knew by heart, every step ingrained, every lift and pivot precise. Before going further, drop your location in the comments. I'm curious about my global family. This morning, like most mornings, my mother, Esther, was already in the kitchen, humming a hymn off key. Esther Kelly, 57 years old, a pillar of our church community, a woman who radiated saintly devotion to anyone outside our front door. Inside, she radiated something else entirely. I wheeled Ira into the kitchen, careful to avoid the rug that always snagged his chair. He gave me a small, tired smile. "Morning, Sky?" "Morning, sleepyhead," I replied, already pouring coffee for myself and hot water for Esther's tea. Esther turned, her smile tight. "Skylar, dear, you look exhausted." "Are you sure you're getting enough rest? It's not fair to Ira if you're not at your best." I gripped my mug. "I'm fine, Mum. Just a long night." Ira had been restless, his leg spasms acting up. I'd been up with him for hours. "Well, you know," she sighed, stirring her tea with a delicate spoon, "we sacrificed our lives for you children. Especially for Ira. The least you can do is take care of your brother. It's your duty, your blessing." The words were a familiar poison seeping into my skin. Sacrifice. That was Esther's favourite word, her ultimate weapon. It hit me right in the gut, a familiar ache of guilt. I'd heard it since I was a teenager, since she'd convinced me to give up my college scholarship to stay home, because Ira needs you more. I swallowed the bitter taste, the argument already dead on my tongue. What was the point? She always won. Ira, however, caught my eye. As Esther turned to fuss with the curtains, he leaned in, his voice a low whisper, barely audible above the clinking of Esther's spoon. "You don't have to do this forever, Sky." The words were a tiny spark, a flicker in the darkness I'd lived in for so long. Forever. The thought had always been a crushing weight, but hearing him say it, seeing the earnestness in his eyes, felt different. It was a secret shared, a quiet rebellion. Later that day, Esther decided the utility closet needed a deep spiritual cleansing, which meant I was to empty it, scrub it, and reorganize it. It was a dusty, forgotten space, crammed with old cleaning supplies, broken vacuum parts, and stacks of yellowed papers. As I pulled out a box labelled Household Records 2018-2022, a loose stack of utility bills slid out. Electricity, water, gas. I started to stack them neatly, but something caught my eye. I remembered Esther's constant complaints about the rising cost of utilities, how she'd moan about the astronomical bills, sometimes even showing me a handwritten note of what she claimed she'd paid. But as I flipped through these actual printed bills, the numbers didn't add up. The amounts due on the bills were consistently lower, sometimes by a significant margin, than the figures Esther had quoted or written down. For example, a gas bill from last winter listed $85.42 due, but I distinctly remembered Esther complaining about it being over $100. Another electricity bill from 6 months ago showed $112.78, yet she'd lamented paying almost $200. It wasn't just one or two, it was a pattern across several years. The recorded payments she spoke of, or even showed me on her own scribbled notes, just didn't match the actual bills in my hand. My stomach clenched. This wasn't just a small discrepancy. This was a consistent, deliberate inflation of expenses. Why would she do that? What was she doing with the difference? A cold knot formed in my chest. This wasn't just about guilt trips anymore. This was about something else entirely. Something hidden. The discrepancy in the utility bills gnawed at me. It wasn't just a few dollars here and there. It was a pattern, a consistent overstatement of expenses that had been going on for years. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Why would Esther lie about something so trivial, unless it wasn't trivial at all? That night, after Esther had gone to bed, humming her nightly hymn, I started my real search. I knew her habits. She kept important papers in a locked filing cabinet in her bedroom, but she was meticulous about shredding anything truly sensitive. What she wasn't meticulous about was the overflow, the things she deemed insignificant enough to leave lying around. I remembered seeing her stash bank statements in an old shoebox in her closet, mixed in with old photo albums and church pamphlets. My heart pounded as I tiptoed into her room. The shoebox was there, just as I remembered. I pulled it out, trying to be as quiet as possible. Dust motes danced in the sliver of moonlight from the window. Inside, nestled beneath a stack of faded holiday cards, I found it. A bank statement. But it wasn't Esther's account. The name at the top read, Ira Kelly. My breath hitched. A separate account, under Ira's name. I scanned the statement. It was a savings account, and the balance was shockingly high. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the transactions. Deposits. Regular, consistent deposits. Some were labelled SS Benefit, others Gift. A memory flashed through my mind, sharp and clear. Ira was about 19 then, so 5 years ago. We were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. He'd been unusually quiet. "Sky," he'd said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saving up to disappear." I'd laughed, thinking it was a morbid joke, a dark fantasy from a kid trapped in his own body. "Where would you go, smarty pants?" I'd teased. He'd just smiled, a knowing, almost mischievous glint in his eyes. "Somewhere far away. And I'd take you with me." I'd dismissed it as a pipe dream, a coping mechanism. Now, looking at this statement, it wasn't a pipe dream at all. The next morning I waited until Esther left for her weekly Bible study. Ira was in the living room watching some nature documentary. I walked in, the bank statement clutched in my hand. "Ira," I said, my voice tight. He turned, his eyes widening as he saw the paper. His usual calm facade crumbled. "Sky, I can explain." His voice was barely a whisper. I sat on the armrest of his chair. "Explain what? This account, with your name on it, and all this money?" I held up the statement. His eyes welled up instantly. Tears tracked paths down his cheeks, and he didn't even try to stop them. "It's for you," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "All of it. It's for you." I stared at him, bewildered. "For me? What are you talking about?" He took a shaky breath. "My Social Security back pay. When I turned 18, there was a lump sum, years of benefits they owed me. Mum never told me, but I saw the letter. I had help. A friend. He helped me set up this account. Away from her. And then, over the years, when people gave me cash for my birthday or Christmas or just because, I never told her. I gave it to him to deposit. He's a financial advisor. He helped me invest some of it too, safely. I knew she'd just take it or say it was for family expenses that never actually got paid. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I've been saving it, Sky, every single penny, for 5 years. I know what she did to you, making you stay, making you give up college. I heard everything. I'm not as dumb as she thinks I am. I saw how you suffered. I wanted to give you a way out, a real way out. My own eyes burned. 5 years. He'd been planning this quietly, secretly, for 5 years. While I was scrubbing floors, changing his sheets, enduring Esther's constant barbs, he'd been building an escape route for me. "Skylar," he whispered, his voice gaining a desperate urgency. "Mum's going to church camp next month. For a whole week. It's your chance. You need to get power of attorney over me, while she's gone. She can't know about this money or she'll find a way to take it. Please, you have to." My mind reeled. Power of attorney. The idea was monumental, terrifying. It meant taking control, legally. It meant a direct confrontation with Esther, a battle I wasn't sure I was ready to fight. But Ira's plea, his raw vulnerability, and the sheer audacity of his secret plan, it froze me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about him too. Ira's words echoed in my head. "You need to get power of attorney while she's at church camp." The idea was terrifying, but the thought of that hidden money, his years of quiet rebellion for me, ignited something fierce inside me. It wasn't just a way out, it was a weapon. The next day, Ira gave me a name and a number, Graham Edwards. He was the financial advisor Ira had mentioned, the one who'd helped him set up the secret account. Graham was in his 40s, calm and professional, with kind eyes that seemed to understand more than he let on. We met at a coffee shop far from our neighbourhood, a place Esther would never frequent. "Ira is a remarkable young man," Graham said, stirring his coffee. "He's been incredibly disciplined. He started this account 5 years ago, right after his 18th birthday. He had a small lump sum from Social Security back pay, and he's been funneling every gift, every bit of cash he's ever received into it. I helped him set up a conservative investment plan. He's amassed $42,000. $42,000! The number hit me like a physical blow. It was real, it was tangible, it was enough. Enough for a deposit on an apartment, enough to get started, enough to breathe. He's very clear, Graham continued, he wants you to have access to this. He wants you to be free, but he's also very aware of his mother's influence. That's why the power of attorney is crucial. It gives you legal standing to manage his affairs, including this account, without her interference. My mind raced. I'd never even considered something like power of attorney. My life had always been about reacting to Esther, not proactively planning against her. I started researching that night, poring over legal websites, trying to understand the process. It was complex, daunting, but not impossible. I needed help, real help, not just moral support. My thoughts turned to Danielle Rivera, my cousin. Danielle, 34, was 5 years older than me, and the only one in our family who had truly broken free from Esther's suffocating orbit. She left home at 18, moved halfway across the country, and only came back for major holidays, always keeping Esther at arm's length. She'd been the family rebel, the one Esther held up as a cautionary tale. I called her. "Danielle, it's Skylar. I need your advice." I laid it all out. The utility bills, Ira's secret account, the $42,000, his plea for power of attorney. I expected shock, maybe even skepticism. Instead, she listened patiently, her voice calm when she finally spoke. "Skylar, this is huge and brilliant on Ira's part. He's always been smarter than Esther gave him credit for. Look, you can't just burn out. You have to fight smarter. You need a lawyer, not just online forms. And you need to be careful. Esther will sense something, she always does." She was right. The tension in the house began to tighten, almost imperceptibly at first. Esther started inventing new chores. The garden needed weeding every day, even though it was already immaculate. The silver needed polishing twice a week. She'd hover, watching me, her eyes narrowed. "You seem distracted, Skylar. Is everything all right? You're not planning anything, are you?" "No, Mom," I'd say, forcing a tired smile. "Just tired." She'd hum, a little too sweetly. "Yes, well, you know we all get tired. But duty calls, doesn't it?" The constant surveillance, the subtle digs, the piling on of tasks. It was her way of keeping me exhausted, too tired to think, too tired to plan. I knew I needed to create a diversion, something big enough to get her out of the house, long enough for me to consult a lawyer in person. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of her spiritual cleaning demands, I decided to stage it. I collapsed onto the sofa, clutching my head, groaning dramatically. "Mom, I don't feel well. My head is pounding. I think I'm going to be sick." Esther rushed over, her face a mask of concern, though I could see the flicker of suspicion in her eyes. "Oh dear, are you sure? Perhaps you're just overtired. You know, you really must take better care of yourself." "No, Mom, it's worse than that. I think I need to see a doctor, or maybe I just need to lie down in a dark room, alone, for a long time." I made sure to sound utterly pathetic, on the verge of tears. It worked. The thought of me being genuinely ill, and therefore unable to perform my duties, seemed to genuinely alarm her. She fussed, offered remedies, but ultimately she decided a quiet house was best for my recovery. "All right, dear," she said finally. "I'll go to the church for evening prayers. I'll pray for your speedy recovery. Just rest, don't move a muscle." As soon as the front door clicked shut, I was up. My head still hurt, but it was from the mental gymnastics, not any real illness. I grabbed my bag, my phone, and the printed bank statement. I had an appointment. This was my chance. The lawyer's office was quiet, sterile. I sat across from a woman named Sarah. A younger attorney Danielle had recommended. She listened, her expression unreadable, as I laid out everything. The utility bill discrepancies, Ira's secret account, the years of parentification, Esther's emotional manipulation. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "Skylar, based on what you've told me, Ira is an adult with the mental capacity to make his own decisions, even if he has physical limitations. His desire for you to have power of attorney, coupled with his financial independence and the evidence of your mother's financial mismanagement, gives us a strong case. We can file the paperwork. It will take some time to process, but we can get it moving." It felt like a monumental step, a real tangible shift in power. I left her office feeling a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. The paperwork was filed, the wheels were in motion, days turned into a week. Esther was still on high alert, but my feigned illness had bought me enough time to start the process. Ira's church camp was still a few weeks away, giving us a small window of opportunity. During this time, I also started looking for apartments online. A small studio downtown, just a few blocks from a bus line that connected directly to Ira's preferred assisted living program, caught my eye. It was small, but it was mine. I applied, filled out the paperwork, and, with Ira's quiet help, arranged for the first month's rent and security deposit to be transferred from his secret account to my personal one. A necessary step to secure the lease. He was so meticulous, so careful, making sure no digital trace would lead back to him. The approval came through a few days later. I signed the lease electronically, my hand trembling. It was real. I was actually doing it. I was about to escape. That evening I was doing laundry, folding Ira's clothes, my mind buzzing with plans for packing and moving. I'd been so careful, so discreet. But Esther, as Danielle had warned, was always watching. I must have left my purse open on the kitchen counter, a moment of carelessness in my excitement. When I walked back into the kitchen, Esther was standing there, her back to me, her hand inside my bag. My blood ran cold. She turned slowly, a small, brightly coloured flyer clutched in her hand. It was from the assisted living facility I'd been researching for Ira, one of the places he'd expressed interest in. I'd picked it up during a quick, secret visit, just to get a feel for the place. Her face was contorted, a mask of righteous fury. "What is this, Skylar?" she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "Assisted living for Ira. Are you abandoning your brother?" The words hit me like a physical blow, but it wasn't just the words. It was the tone, the accusation, the familiar tactic. My mind flashed back years ago. I was 18, fresh out of high school, holding an acceptance letter to a state university, a full scholarship for my grades. I'd been so excited, so hopeful. "Ira needs you more, Skylar," Esther had said then, her voice soft, but her eyes like steel. "He can't manage without you. We sacrificed so much for him. You can't just leave us. It would break his heart. It would break my heart. You'd be abandoning your family, your duty. Are you really that selfish?" The memory was a sharp, painful echo. I'd crumbled then, tears streaming down my face, letting the scholarship slip away. I'd stayed. I'd sacrificed my life, my future, for her twisted definition of duty. But this time it was different. I was 29. I wasn't that terrified 18-year-old anymore. I stared at her, my jaw tight. "No, Mom," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm not abandoning him. I'm giving him a choice, a life. And I'm choosing one for myself, too." Her eyes narrowed, her grip on the flyer tightening. "You think you can just walk away after everything, after all we've done for you?" "Yes," I said, the word a quiet declaration. "I do." The POA paperwork was filed. The lease for my studio downtown was signed. Ira had helped me arrange everything. I was about to escape. The next morning I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I had a plan. I had a lawyer. I had Ira's quiet support. I was packing a small bag, just essentials for the first few days. When I heard the front door open, it was too early for Esther to be back from her morning errands. My heart leaped into my throat. I walked out of my bedroom and there she was, Esther, standing in the living room, not in her usual house dress, but in her Sunday best. A large, ornate cross clutched in her hand, her eyes blazing with a terrifying, righteous fury. She hadn't gone to the store. She'd gone to church. And she'd come back armed. She looked like she was ready for a holy war. Esther stood in the living room, a sentinel of judgment, the large wooden cross clutched in her hand like a weapon. Her eyes, usually so carefully composed for public consumption, were wild, burning with a mix of fury and something akin to desperation. "Skylar," she began, her voice low and trembling with barely suppressed rage. "What is this I hear? You're moving out, leaving your family." "Leaving Ira?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stand tall. This was it, the final confrontation. "Yes, Mom. I'm moving out. I've signed a lease for an apartment downtown. And Ira is going to be transitioning to an assisted living program that he chose," her face contorted. "He chose! Don't be ridiculous. He can't choose anything. He needs us. He needs me. And you ungrateful child. After everything I've done for you, you think you can just abandon us?" She took a step forward, the cross held aloft. "I'll tell everyone what you are. I'll tell the church. I'll tell the family. I'll tell them you're selfish, that you're abandoning your disabled brother, that you're a cruel, heartless daughter." The words, once so potent, so capable of reducing me to a quivering mess of guilt, now felt hollow. I'd heard them 1,000 times in 1,000 variations. They were just noise now. "Go ahead, Mom," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the tremor in my hands. Tell them whatever you want. It won't change anything. I'm leaving." Her eyes narrowed, searching my face for any sign of weakness, any flicker of the old guilt. When she found none, her expression hardened into something truly ugly. "You think you can just walk away from your responsibilities? From God's will? You'll regret this, Skylar. You'll be alone. You'll have nothing." "I'd rather have nothing and be free than have everything and be trapped," I retorted, the words surprising even myself with their sharpness. Just then, Ira, who had been listening from his bedroom doorway, wheeled himself into the living room. He looked at Esther, then at me, his face a mixture of fear and determination. "Mom," he said, his voice surprisingly firm, "stop it. Skylar isn't abandoning me. She's helping me." Esther whirled on him, her fury momentarily diverted. "Ira, don't you dare speak to me that way. Your sister is being selfish and she's filling your head with nonsense." Ira ignored her. He maneuvered his wheelchair closer to me, his eyes fixed on mine. With a subtle, almost imperceptible movement, he reached into the side pocket of his wheelchair bag. His hand emerged, clutching a thick, cream-coloured envelope. He held it out to me, his hand shaking slightly. No words. Just tears streaming down his face, a silent plea, a profound act of love. I took the envelope. It felt heavy in my hand. Esther was still ranting, her voice rising in pitch, but her words faded into a dull hum as I opened the flap. Inside, nestled between two crisp pieces of paper, was a check. My breath caught in my throat. $42,000, made out to me, my name clear as day. Below the check, there was a folded piece of paper. A handwritten note, in Ira's surprisingly neat script. "For all the years you weren't allowed to be you." The words blurred through my own rising tears. It wasn't just a gift. It was an apology, a validation, a declaration. It was his ultimate act of rebellion, a silent scream against the years of control and manipulation. He wasn't just giving me money, he was giving me my life back. He was telling me I deserved it. I looked up at Ira, my vision swimming. He nodded, a small, resolute gesture. He had done this for me. He had saved, planned, and risked everything, not just for his own freedom, but for mine. And in that moment, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about my escape anymore. This was about our escape, together. And Esther, for all her righteous fury and her cross, had no idea what was coming. The check for $42,000 felt like a live thing in my hand, a beating heart of defiance. Ira's note, "For all the years you weren't allowed to be you," was a silent scream that echoed in my soul. Esther was still raging, her voice a high-pitched drone, but her words couldn't penetrate the bubble of resolve that had formed around me. "I'm calling a family meeting," she shrieked, her face mottled red. "Tonight, everyone needs to know what you're doing, Skylar. Everyone needs to see your selfishness." "Fine," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "Call them." She stormed off, probably to start dialing. Ira gave me a watery smile. "You got this, Sky." "We got this," I corrected him, clutching the check and his note. The family meeting was set for 7 p.m. Our living room, usually a place of hushed reverence when Esther was around, buzzed with nervous energy. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all the usual suspects were there. Danielle arrived, giving me a quick, reassuring squeeze on the arm. Even Devin Wallace, my ex-boyfriend, was there, looking uncomfortable. He and I had broken up a year ago, mostly because he thought I needed fixing and couldn't understand why I didn't just talk to my mom. He'd always taken Esther's side, seeing her as the benevolent matriarch. Esther stood at the head of the room near the fireplace, a martyr's expression plastered on her face. She began, her voice dripping with manufactured sorrow. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I called you here today because I have a heavy heart. My daughter Skylar has chosen a path of selfishness and abandonment. She plans to leave her family, to abandon her disabled brother, Ira, who relies on us completely. She's even looking into putting him in an assisted living facility, as if he's a burden, not a blessing." A murmur went through the room. Some of my aunts shook their heads, their expressions sympathetic to Esther. Devin looked at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. "She's ungrateful," Esther continued, her voice rising. "After all the sacrifices we've made, we gave up everything for these children, especially for Ira. And now Skylar wants to just walk away, leaving us to fend for ourselves." She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, though no tears appeared. I stepped forward, holding up a neatly folded document. "Mom, that's not entirely true." Esther glared at me. "Don't you dare contradict me, Skylar. This is my house, and I will speak the truth. And I will speak my truth," I countered, my voice clear and steady. "You say I am abandoning Ira. You say he relies on you completely, but that's not what Ira says." I unfolded the document. "This is a copy of the power of attorney I filed for Ira. He requested it. He wants me to manage his affairs because he believes I'm the only one who truly looks out for his best interests." Gasps rippled through the room. Esther's face went pale. "That's a lie. You manipulated him. He's not capable of making such decisions." "Oh, he's capable, Mom," I said, pulling out my phone. "More capable than you ever gave him credit for. In fact, he's been planning his own future, and mine, for years. And he recorded a message for all of you, for anyone who thinks I'm abandoning him." I pressed play. The room fell silent as Ira's voice, clear and strong, filled the air. It was a voicemail he'd recorded for me just that morning, knowing this moment would come. "Hi everyone, this is Ira. I know my mum, Esther, is probably telling you a lot of things about Skylar right now, about how she's selfish, how she's abandoning me. But that's not true. Skylar is the only one who ever truly took care of me. She changed my diapers, she fed me, she helped me with my homework, she stayed up with me when I was sick. She gave up her college scholarship to stay here because Mum convinced her I needed her. But Mum never really saw me as a person. She saw me as a prop, a reason to control Skylar. She saw me as a way to get sympathy and praise from the church. She never cared about what I wanted. Skylar does. She's helping me move into a place where I can have more independence, where I can make my own choices. She's not abandoning me. She's freeing me, and she's freeing herself. So please don't believe what she says. Skylar is the best sister anyone could ask for. She deserves to be happy. We both do." The voicemail ended. The silence in the room was deafening, thick with shock. Then the room exploded. My Aunt Carol, usually so quiet, gasped, "Esther, is that true? You kept Skylar from college?" My cousin Mark, who had always been distant, looked at me with new eyes. "Ira said she saw him as a prop." "What does that mean?" Esther, her face a mask of pure fury, lunged forward. "You little demon! You've turned my own son against me! You're evil!" She raised her hand. The cross still clutched tightly. I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, my eyes locked on hers. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Ira. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. Esther lunged, the wooden cross still clutched in her hand. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, a sight I'd only ever glimpsed in private, never in front of an audience, but I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, my eyes locked on hers, a quiet defiance burning in my chest. Before she could reach me, my Uncle David, a burly man who usually kept to himself, stepped between us. "Esther, that's enough," he boomed, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. He gently but firmly took the cross from her hand. Esther stumbled back, her eyes darting around the room, seeing the shocked faces, the whispers, the dawning realization in the eyes of her family. Her carefully constructed facade, the saintly matriarch, was crumbling. "You've been lying to us, Esther," Aunt Carol said, her voice trembling. "About Schuyler's college, about Ira's needs. And the money," my cousin Mark added, looking directly at Esther. "Ira said you saw him as a prop. Did you take his benefits?" Esther, cornered, finally broke. She let out a guttural cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated defeat, and then she fled the room, slamming the front door behind her. The silence she left behind was heavy, charged. Danielle walked over and put an arm around me. "You did good, Sky, really good." Over the next few days, the fallout was swift and brutal, a domino effect of consequences. With the power of attorney officially processed, my lawyer, Sarah, immediately sent a notice to the bank, legally blocking Esther's access to any of Ira's funds. She also contacted the Social Security Administration, informing them of Ira's new legal guardian and the potential misuse of his benefits by his previous caretaker. A CPA, whom Sarah had recommended, began reviewing Ira's financial records, comparing the incoming benefits with the actual expenses. It didn't take long for him to confirm what I already suspected. Esther had indeed been inflating expenses and diverting a portion of Ira's Social Security benefits for years, funneling the difference into her own accounts. It wasn't a massive sum that would send her to jail, but it was enough to trigger an official investigation. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at our house addressed to Esther. I saw it on the counter, a plain white envelope with the distinctive logo of a government agency. I knew what it was. An IRS probe, no doubt, triggered by the discrepancies in her reported income and the actual funds she'd been receiving. It was a quiet, bureaucratic kind of karma, delivered not by my hand, but by the consequences of her own unchecked actions. Esther's mask began to slip in public. The whispers at church intensified. People who had once praised her devotion now looked at her with suspicion. She stopped attending services as frequently. Her carefully curated image as a selfless caregiver, the saint of our community, was eroding, replaced by the ugly truth. I cut contact. It wasn't a dramatic pronouncement, just a quiet, firm cessation. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't reply to her texts. I focused on Ira's transition to the assisted living program and my upcoming move. One afternoon, a photograph started circulating within the family group chat. It wasn't from me. It was a grainy, zoomed-in shot taken by someone else, probably a stranger. It showed Esther in the middle of a grocery store aisle, her hair dishevelled, her face red and contorted, screaming at a bewildered cashier about the price of eggs. Her mouth was open in a silent roar, her hands clenched. It was a raw, unfiltered snapshot of her unravelling, far from the composed, pious woman she presented to the world. The image went viral within our extended family network, shared with hushed, knowing comments. It was karma, delivered not by me, but by the relentless, unforgiving lens of exposure. Later that day, my phone buzzed. It was Danielle. Her message was simple, but it hit me hard. "People are asking if you're okay now. They believe you." It wasn't just freedom I'd won. It was validation. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the world was finally seeing the truth. The boxes were mostly unpacked, scattered around the small studio apartment. It wasn't much, just a single room with a tiny kitchen and a bathroom. But the light streaming in through the window felt different here. It felt like my light. The air was clean, free of the stale scent of old hymns and unspoken resentments. I was 29, finally living a life that was truly my own. Over the last few days, the move had been a whirlwind. Danielle had shown up with a few friends, helping me haul boxes, her presence a quiet, unwavering support. We didn't talk much about Esther, just focused on the physical act of building my new space. Ira had been busy too, settling into the assisted living program he'd chosen. It was a place with bright, open common areas, a dedicated physical therapy gym, and staff who treated him like an adult, not a child. He'd called me yesterday, his voice light with excitement, describing the new friends he'd made and the freedom of choosing his own meals. Tonight, Ira and I were having dinner at a small, unassuming Italian place near my new apartment. It was our first real meal together, just the two of us, without the looming shadow of Esther, without the constant awareness of his physical needs dictating every moment. No frantic alarms, no hurried diaper changes, no whispered pleas for quiet. Just us. He wheeled himself to the table, a genuine smile on his face. "This place smells amazing," he said, picking up the menu. "I can't believe I get to order whatever I want, and no one's going to tell me it's too much or unhealthy." I laughed, a real unburdened laugh. "Order the whole menu if you want. It's on me." The $42,000 check from Ira was safely deposited in my new account, a constant reminder of his incredible gift. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his new routine, the independence he felt, the plans he had for learning to code online. I told him about the quiet peace of my apartment, the joy of making my own coffee in the morning without feeling watched. It was a conversation we'd never been allowed to have, a connection we'd never been truly free to forge. Looking at him, truly seeing him, I felt a profound sense of relief, but also a quiet ache. The victory was mine, ours, but it wasn't clean. Freedom wasn't clean. The years of parentification, the emotional manipulation, the constant guilt, they had left scars, deep ones. I knew they wouldn't just vanish because I had a new address and a full bank account. I didn't want to destroy her. That wasn't the goal. I wanted to stop being destroyed, and I had. As we finished our meal, a comfortable silence settled between us. Ira reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Sky, for everything." "No, Ira," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." We walked out into the cool evening air, the city lights twinkling around us. He was going back to a place where he was respected, where he had agency. I was going back to a home that was truly my own. Later, back in my quiet studio, I was scrolling through my phone, checking emails, when it buzzed with an incoming message. My heart gave a little jump. The sender was an unknown number, but the message was short, direct. "She wants to talk." I stared at the screen for a long moment, the words hanging in the air, a ghost from a life I was finally leaving behind. Then, without a moment's hesitation, I hit delete.